Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Bends. It is Monday. We are live from a park in Lisbon. We do this every single Monday and this is episode 2. And what are we talking about today, Paul?
We're talking this week about what shadow work is, or shadow work in general. If you don't know what shadow work is, I'm going to talk about shadow work, why it's important to do, and also give you some little sort of like tools, techniques or ways in which to practice shadow work. The reason I wanted to talk about shadow work this week is because it's something that's coming up in my Kundalini Inner Circle group and Kundalini Pro course as well. It's the week of shadow work, so I thought I would just get it out to the world in case anybody's been hearing about shadow work, etc, and wants to know a little bit more.
Yeah, so, it felt quite fitting to address it now because we've been working with it all week, and we'll just dig into what shadow work is. So I'd like to give a little synopsis of what it is. It's basically that drawer we've all got at home which we put shit in that we just don't address. So it could be cables, like I know in our drawer we've got iPhone bloody 1 cables.
Let's not go into what's in our
drawer. But anyway,
because I can assure you that our drawer will definitely be much more of a shit show than other people's drawers.
And we call it the shit drawer, just stick it in the shit drawer. Yeah. And I think we do this throughout life as well, maybe whether we're aware of it or not. This is kind of what shadow work is in a tiny, if we were to condense it into a little
drawer.
Yeah, that's it. So we're going to talk about this and how we can become a bit more aware around it. So let's just dive straight into what is shadow work, Paul. Do you want to go?
So shadow work is basically looking at parts of ourselves that we usually hide, and unmasking them and unraveling some of our deepest fears so that we can come into the light. So it's basically digging a little bit in the darkness so that we can release things that don't serve us or that hinder us from personal or spiritual growth, so that we can move forward for more spiritual and personal growth and experience greater joy in life. Sorry, I've got a peacock hairdo today. So it's basically, it's work that we do on ourselves that allows us to move forward from some blockages that we might be holding. So I want to call this, in yoga we tend to call this svadhyaya. I'm going to relate it to svadhyaya. Svadhyaya basically means self-study. And specifically in Kundalini yoga, other forms of yoga as well, but when you're on the yogic path or you are specifically studying Kundalini yoga, you will start to feel or notice that things start to rise to the surface, things that maybe we haven't dealt with, things that we've possibly shoved into our subconscious, or it might be somewhere in the consciousness, but we don't like to address it. We mask it, we hide it, we distract ourselves from it, we do anything we can to not address and release this thing. But when we come into Kundalini yoga, for example, when we work with Kriya, which is exercise practice to help us eliminate things, whether that's physical, whether that's cognitive, mental, whether that's energetic. Kriya works with eliminating. Okay, so in life we obviously take in a lot of stuff, information throughout life, energetic things. We store the wardrobe up, the shit drawer, and we don't clear it as much as we take on. So we're taking on a lot more than we're eliminating, and this can result in dis-ease, discomfort, mental blockages, physical, spiritual, emotional blockages. And what we're trying to do here with shadow work is we're trying to look at some of those things that we're storing so that we can bring them to the surface so that we can let go of them if they are not serving our greatest purpose. So it's basically understanding our deepest fears and working with those fears instead of not working with them, and so that we can experience greater joy in life.
And it can be hard, it can be it's not all sunshine and rainbows, shadow work. Some stuff will come up.
It's definitely not sunshine and
Some
rainbows.
stuff will come up and you'll think, it is like that drawer, you'll pick it out, you'll pick out that Nokia 3210 charger and you'll think, I don't even own a Nokia 3210, let's get rid of that,
Or I
whatever.
can't believe I've still got a Nokia for 3210 when everybody else is on iPhone
All these
13.
things, it's like that. It's opening it up and thinking, do I need this thing? Is it holding me back? Is it taking up space that is not belonging to me? Is it even mine? Have I borrowed that charger off someone else and stored it in my cupboard? You know, and it isn't always light work. You have to address some of these darkness, and I think through growth, and we all should be growing, because if you're not growing, you are dying, and they're the facts. I think with growth that comes, it's like anything. The sun will hit you, and the shadow's bigger sometimes. So you have to look at that shadow and try face it head on. You know, instead of.
And this is part of the journey to self-awareness, really, which is what I teach, because I teach Kundalini yoga, and Kundalini yoga is called the yoga of awareness because it enables us to very quickly address some of these issues that are holding us back. It opens us up physically, it opens us up emotionally, it opens us up energetically, and it also allows us to watch our thought patterns a little bit more. It opens us up mentally and cognitively. So when these things start to open up and we start to unravel layers, I always call it layers of onion layers. It's like peeling off an onion layer at a time, and sometimes what you reveal isn't necessarily something you wanted to see.
You can't peel back an onion without tears.
Yeah, exactly. And shadow work specifically challenging when you have gone through trauma, which we all have somewhere along the lines. Trauma can come out in many different ways. It can come out and it can be quite haunting. Sometimes it can feel supernatural. Sometimes it can come up in dreams and in lucid dreams, and it can come up in your reality, and it can be disturbing. But without these disturbances, we only get attached to comfort. And Kundalini yoga shows you the discomfort. That's part of the practice. It shows you discomfort in life. It shows you discomfort in how your mindset is on the mat, how you're having to move through exercises that are uncomfortable, eye gaze that are uncomfortable, mudras that are uncomfortable, meditation that's uncomfortable, because we're starting to look at ourselves a little bit deeper.
I think it's the biggest mirror when it comes down to practices in the world ever. It really does show. It's looking in the mirror, and you don't have anywhere else to look, so you've got to face everything head on.
Yeah.
And as much as it can be dark, it's so rewarding, and it strips that off.
Well, it's vital. It's
baggage.
necessary.
Yeah,
it's necessary.
Exactly. It's very necessary, especially in today's world. It's more needed than ever before. But anyway, going back to the shadow work, do you want to give some tips as well?
Yeah. So basically, there we have it in a nutshell. Shadow work is looking at deeper, hidden layers of yourself that are holding you back from experiencing life with joy and inner peace, and I suppose presence. And how can we look at some of these things and move forward from them, picking them apart, understanding them, watching ourselves, becoming the observer of how we're interacting with people, how we're moving through life, through time and space, and how we're
using them to your advantage as well. Like it's just looking at something, using it, whether you need it or not, addressing it and becoming aware. That's it in a nutshell.
It's awareness, yeah. Okay, so what I wanted to do was to give some little
pointers,
maybe
tips.
some three ways in which to practice shadow work if you're wanting to move forward. And the reason why would a human being want to move forward from the space that they're in is because often if we don't move forward from things, we become lacking in some way, we suffer in some way, we carry on listening to the mind instead of befriending the mind, we carry on allowing the mind to dissolve us and disintegrate us, and we shadow off the heart space, and this results in things like anxiety, fear of the future, depression, fear of the past or holding on to the past, just general stagnation.
And if you can really feel yourself when you're not moving forward, and often or not, in all aspects of life, I believe it could be a number of things, but it's either laziness sometimes that you're not wanting to do it. It's either,
which we all do.
We're humans. We like comfort.
Creatures of comfort.
We talked about this last week in our habit forming things. We are creatures of comfort, but it comes through either laziness and not trying hard enough,
not knowing what
all this is my second point, it's knowledge. It's actually knowledge. You don't know where to look, you don't know how to look, you don't know, or sometimes we do and we're not learning the right thing. And I do believe that that's where it comes from, like a lack of knowledge in stuff moving forward. You don't know how to move forward, you don't know which way to go, in which direction, etc. But yeah, it does cause stagnancy if not, and I think they're the two things that do hold us back from it.
So these are three ways in which to practice shadow work. There's loads of ways in which to practice shadow work, but if you are on a journey of spiritual and personal growth, then it's a necessary part of the journey. Otherwise you're just going to feel blocked and trapped all the time, and there's no need to. You know, I continuously get these traps, these blocks, and I'm like, where do I need to move next? And it's usually shadow work. So here's 3 ways in which to practice it. There's other ways, but these are my ways that I also like to practice in this way. So the first one is understanding the mind. Understanding the mind is a really, really, really important part of shadow work, because you can then start to watch the mind from a bit of a distance instead of getting really involved with it. You know, I always say to my students, how can we maybe watch the mind like watching a play? So sit back with a bag of popcorn and just watch the characters like the thoughts are just moving in flux, because it's continuously in flux, is the mind. It's in fluctuation, it's always in fluid motion, and it's a computer, right? So it's just going to continuously bring stuff up.
With no instructions. We make it sound easy, watch the mind and watch your thoughts, but we've got to remember this is a computer with 0 instructions.
Yeah, it's continuously in flux. But one of the most important things to do when you're working with shadow work is to start to understand or befriend the mind a little bit more, instead of just allowing it to run you and rule you and bury you in fear. Instead, if you can take a little look back and understand what it is and what it's doing a little bit more, it's a bit easier to be able to work with it. So I want to just come to teach the notion of the 3 minds very, very quickly, because I find this is a really, really nice way to start watching the mind. So the 3 minds, we've got the positive mind, we've got the negative mind, and we've got the neutral mind. The positive mind is our expansive mind, the negative mind is our protective mind, and the neutral mind is our meditative mind, which is the beautiful mind that everybody wants to stay in, which is near enough impossible to stay in that mind. However, all these minds are just as vitally important as one another. The negative mind's the protective mind. So let's call this our it likes to keep us safe. It likes
to fight
to protect
or flight
us.
kind of mode,
yeah.
isn't it?
It's when there's danger happening around us, say there was a fire in our house or wherever, the negative mind would come in, it would go, right, now it's time to act quickly. It's the alarm bells that go off in the body, like Don says, the fight or flight. It's an important part of the mind. The positive mind is our expansive mind, it's our creative mind, it's the thing that drives us forward, it's the thing that opens us up. Kundalini Yoga focuses a lot on the positive mind. It's the expansive mind, it's lightening, it's creative, it's forward and outward, yeah? And the negative mind is inward and protective, right? Both of which are very, very important. If those 2 minds are unbalanced, if we're just working from the positive mind and we're moving forward all the time and we're creative and open, it might be that our guard is not up. And we do need our guard to be slightly up. For example, self-discipline sometimes might come into if we've got a little bit of an imbalance in the positive mind, we might be a sort of person who might not be disciplined that much, okay, because we're just freely moving through everywhere, like a child. This is Don. So you might need to work a little bit on that negative mind to be able to balance it out a little bit. And when the negative mind is overrunning the positive mind, it might be that you're coming from a very fear-based space. Everything that you're doing is very protective. Everything that you're doing is fearful. You're very fearing of the future. You're working from the head a lot.
This opens a gate for anxiety, depression, all the other stuff we talked about earlier. That tends to come through that mindset, I believe.
And then the neutral mind is that space of awareness, that sort of empty space. When we come into a meditation or something like that, that space that we're coming into that feels very whole. It's very much from the intuitive space, it's the heart space, it's very present. It's that, I suppose, collective awareness, collective consciousness. And really the aim that we want to be doing in our yoga practice, to coming back to that space, because it allows us to look at the other minds, the negative and the positive mind, with more awareness.
Well, it's a tool to get there, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a very known tool to get there. People do hit
Exactly.
the mat to try get into this space. And
so that we can look at things from a
Exactly,
distance.
yeah.
And when you start to understand the mind in those, I like to look at it in those three things. There's obviously, the mind's very complex, it's got much more to it than that. But if you can start to segregate the mind into positive, negative and neutral, you can start to become a lot more aware of which mind is in control at that time, so that you can then shift it.
And you might be listening to this thinking, yeah, the positive mind, I need to be in that. But like Paul says, you do need, because you think negative and you automatically think, I don't want that mindset, I don't want that mindset. But I'll just go back to my struggles. It is with self-discipline. I'm always been like a yes guy. I'm up for anything. I'll take it all on board. 3 bags full, let's go. And yeah, it can sometimes get you in a bit of trouble, and sometimes it can pull you in directions.
He lives very in the present moment.
Yeah, but with that, if my mind is but any of them, it'd be the present moment and the positive, and the negative, I tend not to take it on board, which is it's really good, because I do stay in a higher state of vibe. You know, I'm always vibing pretty
He's the vibe
high.
man.
But as you know now, I'm on this challenge of not drinking for 40 days, and I'm struggling here and there, because I don't live in that negative mind enough, and I'm hoping this will help develop self-discipline. So yeah, if you're listening to this and you think, I don't want that negative mind, because that's where I've been.
It's about being aware and watching them and knowing that the mind's just being what it is.
Well, it's making a meal. You need a bit of seasoning of all these things to make a meal complete or whatever, and it's the same with the brain. You need little pinches of each in different scenarios. They don't all have to be up and down like that. You might need a certain one in a certain situation, like I'm doing now with self-discipline. Do you want a pint? The negative mind needs to creep in and be like, no, you need more of that discipline, etc. So
it's the protection. The negative mind will then have the protection and go, is that
yourself.
quite right for
Yeah.
you? Look after yourself. But I think when this is where shadow work comes into play with these 3 minds, is that if you can start to understand those 3 minds and know that the mind is just doing its job. That's all it's doing, it's just doing its job. It's nothing to be fearful of. We've all got these different things, these different minds. And if we can just decompartmentalise them and put them into a little box each time, go, right, that was the negative mind, how can I balance that out a bit? That was the positive mind, how can I balance that out a bit? And keep coming back to that neutral mind, that meditative space, then we can watch things with a little bit more ease. And this is a really important part of shadow work, because if we don't have the mind I don't want to say in boxes, but if we can't command the mind, then we will struggle even more so with the shadow work, because we can't see what we're doing. We're clouded still by the mind.
And that's when you get stuck into just one of them mindsets. People do get depressed and find it so hard to get out of depression, etc., because they don't have the tools and other stuff to help them balance that mindset out. Or someone can be too positive and they can end up being in every party going and all this lot, and drinking themselves to death or whatever they're doing. And this is where you can get stuck in a certain mindset, and both are can be equally as dangerous as one of each, you know. So yeah.
So that's part of the shadow work sort of number 1 tip, is to start to become aware of your thought patterns, and understand the thought patterns a little bit more, so you can watch them as the observer instead of getting really, really, really involved. Now that brings me on to the second point, because it's not just as simple as doing that. It takes mindfulness, it takes daily practice. In fact, it's a full-time job, by the way. It's a full-time job of babysitting your mind, and you can't let it go. It's a continuous thing that needs to be watched. The mind always needs to be watched, because it's very tricksy, right? The ego likes a short-term fix, so it just goes to what's most comfortable. So this brings me on to the second point of shadow work. So another fabulous way in which to practice shadow work is meditation. I think it's one of the best ways to practice shadow work. And meditation is also going to help you with the 3 minds and understanding the 3 minds, because when we start to come into meditation, now that might be breath meditation, it might be mantra meditation, it might be Kundalini, is generally a meditation, a moving, strong, active meditation in many forms. But meditation, whatever it is, concentrating your mind on object, becoming aware of something in a very, very present moment. Meditation is one of the main driving forces of shadow work, because, and this is why people find it so challenging, because meditation is allowing us to look at ourselves deeper, questioning ourselves, questioning elements of who we are, objectively, you know.
Because you're sitting still with just your thoughts, nothing else, so stuff comes up here that you didn't know. This is where the shadow
comes up.
Yeah,
in meditation,
time, yeah.
The shadow comes up, and it doesn't necessarily come up straight away in the meditation. It might be that, you know, we practice it over a certain amount of days, and you start to get some emotional releases in different ways, and a lot of cognitive fluctuation, and even the body can start to react to some of this deeper inner work that we're doing through meditation. And it might come up days later, and then that's when we can start to address these things by watching the mind, even watching the three minds, and understanding where we're how we can move through some of these blockages. So a good way to come into shadow work is to start to meditate. Ask yourself questions, you know, questions of, you know, who am I? Why am I experiencing life in the way that I'm experiencing? What is it that I need to resolve? Where are my limitations? Where are my blockages? Writing some of these things down. And it comes with time as you start to work through meditation. You might get little words and little
I also think we have got the
realizations.
Answers. We've always got the answers in us anyway. We
comes from
always
sitting
have
with
to,
them.
and it does. A lot of people become blocked because they don't sit and actually have time and listen
stillness.
to the answers. All they do is ruminate in what they're doing now. They're with distractions, with fear-based stuff. And they don't come from a place with compassion and actually speak to themselves like a schizophrenic and say, listen mate, what do I need to do? And then, because you do know the answers are just in there, and these distractions.
But the answers come through stillness.
Yes,
they never come through this loud, noisy world that we live in. And
the distractions, that's all they are.
we live in a very exterior world, don't we? We live in a modern, fast exterior world. And meditation is very much about coming into the interior world and listening a little bit more to that inner wisdom, that inner intuition. Instead of taking everything from the outside in, with the stillness that we experience through meditation, we start to look at things from the inside out a little bit. So we start to look at what can we see within us that's hindering our growth in some way. He's got a really funny eye on this pigeon here because he's got some weird feet.
He's doing a weird technique.
He's got some weird feet.
It's not that. It took him about half an hour to drink. We sat next to a little puddle and there's a pigeon drinking it. If you're listening, we probably sound crazy, but I've just watched a pigeon.
It hasn't got any feet, has it?
It's a bit odd anyway, but
it's got 2 stalks, but that's fine. So yes, sitting in stillness is a really vital component for shadow work. We can't do shadow work if we're continuously distracted, flicking through loads of tabs, flicking through loads of different Facebook, Instagram.
All you're doing is adding to that drawer. That drawer that we talked about at the very beginning, that shit drawer, all you're doing with that stuff is just adding more baggage in there, and it's going to get harder to peel off as well. So.
Yeah, so it's about sitting in stillness, understanding the mind. These are 2 parts of shadow work. And the last one I want to talk about...
Can I just jump in? Sorry there. I'm going to give you a free meditation. I just thought of a good meditation that'll be good for this. It's a lion paw meditation.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
It clears, it's like a windscreen wiper, clearing your vision and stuff. That'll be really good to stick in here. I'm going to put that in the comments, guys. If you're listening, it will be in the comments section. It'll be a link straight to...
Now you've just said that actually lion's paw is very, very good for clearing negativity, clearing our aura and our electromagnetic field, and clearing our way. So it's almost like a big emotional, energetic release to help us uncloud the head.
It's a Dyson Hoover for the shit drawer.
The shit drawer. Oh my god, it's a Dyson Hoover for the shit drawer. That's exactly what it is. That's going to be my advertisement for that meditation from now on. Okay, so Don's going to pop that in, but the last thing as well, for if you are contemplating doing some shadow work, is move into the body. So we've got look at the mind, have stillness in meditation, and also releasing and unblocking the body. Now a really, really good way to do this is Kriya. Kriya is part of the Kundalini yoga practice, or yoga in general, but Kriya is fabulous for it because Kriya is removing body blocks. It is, let me just talk about the Sushumna Nadi in the central energy channel. from the base of the spine to the crown is what I'm going to describe as the shit pipe that basically stores a load of rubbish. It is the shit drawer, okay? And we block it.
Got a serious pigeon party going on. You can't see it, but there's at least 6 of them all coming to glug on the puddle. I just thought I'd let everyone know.
So we block it, the pipe, and we don't release it. And Kriya, what it does, Kriya Yoga allows us to release that pipe so we can remove tension from the body, from our muscles, from our skeletal system, from the physical body, the organs. Remove tension from the nervous system, the glandular system, and eventually balancing out the hormones. So all that physical stuff, and also in turn that starts to balance out the mind, the 3 minds. So moving into the body is a really, really vital component of shadow work, because we are physical beings, we're material beings, we learn stuff through the body. And so if you can work with the body for your shadow work, yoga, Kriya, Kundalini is extremely good for it because it's quite instant, it removes blocks very quickly. Stillness, meditation, vital for shadow work, and starting to, in daily life, off the yoga mat, look at how you're moving through time and space through watching those 3 minds a little bit more. Okay, so they're my 3 tips for doing a bit of shadow work, and I hope that's enlightened you a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that
sides.
is a wrap. I think that's all we wanted to talk about today. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, guys, I'm going to stick that meditation in. It just came to me on the spot, so I think that's a great one to use. Find that in the comments, and yeah, we'll be back next week for another episode of Beyond the Bends. We're actually heading to it's a very famous surf spot. It has the world's largest waves next week.
I won't be surfing it.
No, I won't be doing that. But yeah, they can get up to 100 foot. So we're off there next week, and we're going to record our podcast live from Nazar, or Nazare. I'm not sure how you say it in Portuguese.
Yeah, Nazar. I don't know. Just again, Nazare.
It could be that. There's many options this could be called, but I will find out, and next week I'll reveal how you say it in Portuguese. Okay, peace and love. Thanks for tuning in, and the meditation is in the comments, guys. Much love. Bye.
Bye.